Hello! Today I was looking for something new to watch, and while I was looking through Netflix, I saw a new action thriller called Ballerina. It follows a trained expert embarking on a revenge mission to avenge the death of her only friend. It was written and directed by Chung Hyun Lee and stars John Jong-so in the lead role, Park Yoo-rim plays her friend, and Kim Ji-hoon plays the antagonist of the film. Ballerina is a fast-paced tale that feels more like an action music video than a film. It focuses on slick camera work, big visual moments, lots of excitement, and they back it up with a bumpin' soundtrack. The story starts off with a bang, introducing us to our main character by having her stop a robbery, and beat the living snot out of a couple of lowlives. Then we're quickly introduced to the story's problem, and from there we're off to the races. Throughout the journey, there's a good amount of action and dramatic scenes. The action is fast-paced, brutal, and sees some incredibly flashy visuals come up. The story has a lot of satisfying moments tied into the action sequences too. They do a great job of making you want to root for the hero against the criminals. The visual journey is filled with unique angles and shots of the characters, the environments, and the action. They love dramatic low lighting with a lot of contrast and looking through reflections. During the combat, they use fast-paced editing and a lot of energetic camera movement to create brutal, impactful scenes. My favorites were the two shots of the flamethrower being used and the one scene with the little wrist gun. I loved seeing the fire and the flamethrower scenes. The way they pulled back and let you see big long streams of it was cathartic, and the amount of detail in the fire was amazing. The wrist gun scene was a great Chekhov moment that I didn't even see coming, because I thought it was a joke. The way they pulled it out near the end was a pleasant surprise and looked super badass. The soundtrack is filled with pop songs that take center stage. They're catchy and come in at a good volume. They build out the atmosphere and make the entire movie feel like an action music video. During the action sequences, it makes Ok-ju feel like a superheroine and it helps you get pumped up. The cast is filled with supporting roles and background extras with a small core of actors in the limelight. Most of the time is spent watching John Jong-so as Ok-ju look like a badass on her journey for revenge. She does a good job acting out the physical elements while reacting to her friend's death and the vile dealings of the gangsters. There's a little bit of time spent with the different gangsters and all of them come off as believable scumbags that you want to see taken down. Their victims are always sympathetic and the people Ok-ju interacts with on her journey are helpful, kind people. We don't spend much time with anyone, instead spending a lot of time trying to create the right image, and the general cast does a fantastic job of getting the dangerous, seedy vibes of the story right. On the negative side, the story is a complete fantasy that doesn't keep track of damage, flesh out its characters at all, or explain itself in a clear manner. The visual journey and the acting suffer from the storytelling, and the soundtrack, while catchy, doesn't usually match the emotions of the scenery very well. The story is about an ex-bodyguard for celebrities taking on serious gangsters, but no matter how many times they hit this 100-pound woman, she doesn't seem to get seriously injured. She's thrown across the room, smacked over the head, kicked in the chest, falls out of a multiple-story window, and is even shot, but the closest she gets to being injured is a small limp near the end. They don't explain her backstory very well or any of her qualifications. They do show us how good she is at fighting, but that's about all we know about her. They do the same thing with her friend and the antagonist of the story. We learn just enough to follow along, but if you look too deep, you'll see that the backside of the paper is empty. All of the dialogue ends up being exposition or set up for later in the film. It does feel compact, but it also feels a little barren. It ends up affecting the performances of the cast because none of them gets a chance to build out their characters or work through the emotions. Ok-ju gets one or two scenes to be upset about her friend, but they only last about 30 to 40 seconds each. They really cut the emotional aspect of the story short. Like the actors' performances, the visual journey is missing big chunks of the connective tissue. We skip around between locations, only hinting at what happens at each of them so that we can get to the action as fast as possible. It feels disjointed and takes away a lot of opportunities for the actors to build out their characters. It also makes it hard to follow what's going on and even harder to invest in the outcome. You don't actually spend that much time with anyone just living in their environment. The soundtrack suffers from its own ambition. They chose a lot of flashy songs that stood out, and it worked wonders in building up different parts of the atmosphere. That said, it almost always fails to match the emotions of the story, stands out a lot even when it shouldn't, and really only supports the story during the action sequences. Overall, Ballerina is a stylized experience that focuses more on creating a dark and seedy atmosphere with prominent music and big visuals than fleshing out the story and letting the actors build realistic characters. The camera work felt experimental in how far they were willing to go to get a good shot, and if you like the style, you'll love the film. You do have to ignore the story a bit, but that's not hard here. As for a rating, I'd give this film a 6 out of 10. Remember, these are just my thoughts on the film. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Bye-bye!